In fact, he made money by selling these patterns that he used to make different tin things. And I'm going to demonstrate what it took to make a skimmer. What would you use a skimmer for, Addison? If it had little holes in there, would that be using to skim the cream off the milk?
Yeah.
When you take the milk, the actual milk, and you let the milk sit there in a bucket, the cream will come to the top because it's heavier, and then you can skim the cream off, and you take that cream and you put that cream on your cereal in the morning, and then after a week, sitting in the refrigerator, it'd get kind of sour. Well, then Saturday morning, you had to churn that cream into butter in a big old churner like this. You've probably seen some wood walking around. You watch, and that was a wood churner like this. It just went up and down, and it churned that cream into butter. But anyway, this is a pattern that Sylvester used to make this skimmer. This was the bottom, and this was the sides. He put this down here and used these all to trace the bottom out. Then he'd trace out 3 of these and cut them out. Well, once he had them cut out, he would take them and put them in this brake like this, and put lips on them like this, and put them together with all 3 of them together here. Then he'd bring them down here to his seamer, and he'd lay them right on the seamer like this, and run that seamer over there, and which would make it look like this. He'd run them together so you could hold it together like this. Now, we can't use any of the tools here because they're antiques. We can just show you what they do with them. Well, once he had it like that, he would take it and put it through his flange machine right here, and he'd put a flange in it. See that flange on the bottom of that? Okay, then he'd put a flange on the top and the bottom of this. And then he'd take this bottom and put on here and run it through his crimping machine, which would crimp this bottom to the side. Okay, then once he had that done, he would take this little piece of thin wire and bring it up here to the top, and then crimp that there, so when your pan was made, your edge was had a little round to it instead of just a sharp edge. Then he had his soldering gun with his little stove burner right here, so his soldering gun would be hot, and he'd beat his solder and his flex out of there, and he'd solder the joints. So
Okay, so that would melt.
yeah, you get this hot, and this will melt, and
Fill up the holes.
you see right down there, you can see just a little bead of solder. You see that? Okay, he'd do that on these 3 joints, and then he'd run a bead around the bottom here so it wouldn't leak. And him and an apprentice, now Addison, journeyman is what he was called because he spent 4 to 6 years practicing, working for somebody that was a journeyman, and after you spent 4 or 5 years, whatever it took, then you could become a journeyman, and then you'd hire somebody to work with you that was apprentice. And they'd take a journeyman and apprentice, about 4 hours to make one of these. They sold for 50 cents. 6 tin cups over here sold for 37.5 cents. A tin plate sold for 43 cents, which would take him and an apprentice about 15 to 20 minutes to make.
So a plate was the best.
A tin plate. And like that bucket in there, that bucket sold for 50 cents. Now he made all these other different types of things. This was called a hurricane lamp. And the pattern was punched from inside out. So you had the sharp edges pointing out. So that when you went down the street, the wind, those would reflect the wind. So the wind wouldn't blow in and blow your candle out. And each one of these had a set pattern. So each family had their own pattern design. So when you was coming down the street at night, if you knew what the pattern was, you'd recognize who was coming before they even got there.